Today on Mid-Maryland Votes, we're tackling the drug and crime crisis that's gripping Hagerstown, Maryland, and what can actually be done to fix it. Councilman Flaherty and Brian Kurtkyka, a recovering addict turned sober living mentor, join us to talk about real solutions, opioid settlement funding, and breaking the cycle of recidivism. Let's get into it. Welcome to Mid-Maryland Votes. I am your host, Mark Flynn. With me is my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
And tonight we have two special guests. Ethan, would you like to introduce our guests?
Absolutely. One person is familiar to viewers of the program, Sean Flaherty, City Councilman for Hagerstown. And we have a new guest to the program, Brian Kurtkyka, who will be introducing himself shortly. Sean, welcome back.
Hold on. Sean's got a special guest with him.
Right. Thanks for having me. This is Zelda.
Well, thank you for coming to the program, guys. Brian,
thank you.
Can you introduce yourself and your journey of coming to this program tonight?
Sure. My name's Brian Kurtkyka. I am a resident of Hagerstown, well, not Hagerstown City proper, but the Hagerstown area. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. Moved to Hagerstown in 1976. Went to North Hagerstown High School. Went to the University of Maryland, College Park, then went to law school at the University of Baltimore, graduated in 91, passed the bar, and in 2022, due to some very poor choices of my own, I was arrested and incarcerated. And I spent 14 months at the Washington County Detention Center, and then another 8 months at the Maryland Correctional Training Center, the prison here in Hagerstown. When I got out, and I have continued to work a lot since I've been out within the recovery community, and also continuing my own journey of recovering by attending 12-step meetings in the area, some faith-based, some not, but trying to make sure that I keep my addiction under control. It unfortunately led me to the decisions that I made, and really pulled the rug out from under me. Family, career, reputation, everything. But I have strong faith, and that combined with my recovery activities has gotten me where I am today. And that is working in a recovery home here just outside of the Hagerstown city limits. I believe Bill Johns was on your program a week or so ago, and Bill and I met at the organization Gatekeepers, which you mentioned, back in December. And Bill and I both know that it was a God-directed thing. And so Bill said, I could use somebody like you to help me. I write grants to try to get funding to run the house, and you sound like you have a brain and could do good things with our house. So I came on board in December. So now I've been there a little under a year, and working with the men here who are in recovery from drug and alcohol abuse has been a great blessing to me. I'm using my reasoning and negotiation skills and writing abilities to help men who really are in dire need of help, who are beset by this awful addiction crisis, and they need help. They need to get to the resources that are available to them for mental health, physical health, services, housing, transportation, job support, everything that's needed for an individual to function in our society. And of course, most of all, the drug and alcohol recovery. And so I help Bill run the house. I help him.
And what's the name of the house?
It's called True North Company. So that's TRU and then capital NORTH, True North.
And it's a sober living facility in the Hagerstown, Washington County region.
Correct. We're on the west side, just outside of the city limits. I've been doing this now, like I said, for just under a year, and I love it. I get to drive men around to their programs and go in with them to the 12-step meetings, take them there to their treatment appointments, and really get to know some very fine individuals.
Well, you've definitely walked through darkness. There's no doubt about that. With your addiction and your incarceration, and now you're helping others find the light, which is an awesome and incredible calling. What is something about addiction that most people without an addiction wouldn't really understand?
It may not be quite as obvious, but drug and alcohol addiction, it doesn't know race, it doesn't know class, financial status, educational. It doesn't matter. It can strike anybody, any family, at any time, and everybody has to. We take a special interest in children. Trying to make sure the kids today learn how to stay away from drug and alcohol. Trying to get into the schools. Ethan's been talking with us about this and getting the Board of Education, the county commissioners, and the school authorities to say, look, you got to take this seriously. It's been a scourge on our community here in Hagerstown and Washington County in general for quite some time. And we need the kids to know that that's not the lifestyle they want. Many of them grow up in poverty. They're in single parent families. Low income, not getting the kind of support they need in school educationally. And many times they have family members, siblings, parents who are already into drugs, already into alcohol. And we need to educate so that these kids can get a leg up and not just fall right into that at an early age. The other thing I would say is that drug and alcohol use is most often it's a disease. It's not something that many people choose. I've seen guys come through the house who were injured in combat, injured in sports related activities or on the job activities. They're prescribed painkillers. They don't work, or they get too many or too high of a dose. And after a couple of months, they find themselves hooked. And it's very difficult for them to come off of that because they're still in pain, many of them. And through no fault of their own, they're hooked. And now they don't know where to turn. And because they've never been through something like this, they don't know who to ask. And we help, along with gatekeepers and other organizations here in the Washington County area and in Hagerstown City. We try to work to direct them to the services that are here. Hagerstown has a wealth of services and so many wonderful people working in those organizations that really do want to get these people where they need to go. Needs assessment right off the bat is the first thing. We got to have a baseline of what's going on in your life. And then from that needs assessment, we can then determine, not necessarily myself or Bill, but other professionals, we can determine how best to handle their situation, how to give them the support that they need. If I could just impress on people one thing is that these are our fellow citizens. They are entitled to respect. They're entitled to compassion. They're not refuse. They're not somebody that doesn't deserve a second chance, maybe a third or fourth chance even. They're trying their best in many cases, and their addiction has got a hold of them.
That also brings us to kind of what brought us to do this episode, which is that when we had filmed the episode with Bill Johns and Sean a couple weeks ago, there was a response where people found it very interesting and actually felt that it really helped them start to understand what the issue with addictions are. And it is particularly relevant at this point in time because there has now been a source of funds from both the opioid settlement money nationwide and also from the marijuana sales tax statewide, where money is coming locally into Washington County and all the counties and all the cities, including Hagerstown. And now determinations need to be made as far as how best to spend it in order to help relieve the drug scourge, I think is appropriate word. And of course, with Sean being on the city council, he is one of the primary people who is responsible for figuring out how best to help with this.
Yeah, I think the city's going to get about $600,000 worth of the opioid money settlement from what I know. But I did recently go to the gatekeepers meeting this past Saturday. That was my first meeting to see what they do in our community and kind of learn more about addiction and things like that. Because I lived here years ago and I knew the drug issue was bad, but I had no idea how much it's deteriorated since I moved back. So, and like we said, there's a lot of, we have the prisons here and a lot of other things. And, and once you get hooked, it's very hard to get off. And then, we have a transient population, a lot of folks that are, stuck on drugs and other things, or they have criminal records. A lot of them are even native to Hagerstown, but it's affected all of our city. It's expected, public safety, everything. And, you go to downtown and, I was on Locust Street and I even saw somebody was shooting up in broad daylight. So it's become a plague for our city, where that's become a big campaign issue with the last election. And, and it's been continuously an issue with everybody. But Gatekeepers was a great organization. I went there this past Saturday. I got to see folks, they're putting in the work in to turn their lives around. And that's what I want. Like I said, I think we all want people to get help and be a better, productive member of society, and there's resources to do that as well.
And if they don't have the support they need, whether it be family or resources, they're probably going to turn back to crime. And that's why our recidivism rates are so high. And so Gatekeepers is trying to bridge that gap by working with the jail and the prison system to say, hey, we can be there to pick them up. If you let us know when they're getting out and they don't have any family or friends to pick them up, we'll be there and we'll help find them housing and so on and so forth. So it really was focused on reentry services, the basics, housing, food, clothing, shelter, and then working on creating a resume or getting the job skills that were needed to secure employment. And they've been doing it for 12 or 13 years now. They are now in 49 out of 50 states in the prisons that are here in the United States. They have on the tablets that the inmates have, they have a thing called the Business of Living. And it's a Gatekeepers design program that Bill and the other men that he was working with. It focuses on your personal issues. It focuses on your employment, focuses on spirituality. And it really is a way for the men to work on the tablet, create a plan that we can refer to when they get out. And Gatekeepers, they have this Saturday morning, what they call a resource club, and everybody is allowed to come. And we have security there just in case things get a little out of hand. But they come and they listen to speakers from the community, friendly employers, personnel from the Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration, Social Security, Maryland Health Exchange, CASA for domestic abuse, you name it. There's all kinds of people there that say, hey, we want to help, get you an ID card, get you your driver's license, get you health insurance, sign up for Medicaid, whatever it might be. And they get
these are all available at those Saturday morning meetings.
That's right. And then at the end of the meeting, they spring for a free Roy Rogers breakfast meal.
No, you can't beat that. Roy Rogers got the best breakfast in town.
So some people just come for the meal, but we really encourage them to listen and take advantage of the services that are there.
With what you're saying, that is fantastic. Obviously, helping people in need is a good thing. And I don't know anyone who would disagree with that. One of the issues where things get sticky, where the hard decisions kind of come into play, is that when you talk about the level of addictions that have occurred at this point in time in society and in our community in general, there is a level of crime as well that comes along with it, a level of suffering to individuals that are innocent and not affiliated participants in drug addiction. And so, it's gotten to the point where, for example, the individuals, there are so many people who are now shooting up on drugs in downtown Hagerstown. I've heard them referred to as the zombies because, there are times where you can just see them walking around like zombies lined up in various areas. Truly, truly tragic. Where is the distinction? Where is the line between where you deal with people where they are and help them versus having to essentially hold people accountable for the crime, the violent crime, the property crime that accompanies this sort of a scourge.
Yeah, it's a hard equation to solve. What you're talking about with the Narcan and the clean needles and so on is termed harm reduction. If people are going to shoot up, at least we want them to have clean needles so they're not spreading or getting themselves HIV or hepatitis, whatever it might be. And the Narcan, of course, if they overdose, it can be applied, and many times it is effective of saving people from dying from an overdose. However, that's not enough. You can't just keep giving them needles and letting them be Narcan back to life and just go on like nothing happened. It needs to be coupled with the next level of sobriety. How do you get them sober and not needing the needles and the Narcan? So we've got to couple the harm reduction with tried and true methods of lifting them up out of the streets, getting them into supervised housing, usually with some sort of drug treatment, inpatient treatment first, and then moving them to what's called a 3.1 facility where it's a step up from that, where they've got a month or two of sobriety, and then they're still in a supervised environment and not working, focusing on their recovery, focusing on getting their physical and mental health straightened out as best they can in such a short time, and then eventually stepping up to a transition home like Bill and I have, where we want to now start to focus on the job support, education, whatever else to get them to that, eventually being able to live independently, off the drugs, off the alcohol, fully into recovery. And that can take quite a while. We had a gentleman here for, I guess, 2 years, and he was very successful in his recovery, and eventually he was able to get his own place. He's got his own business. He works, and it's, just one of many success stories that we had. Such a great thing to see when you can take somebody who's been in prison, been overdosed several times, can't fight their addiction. Eventually they get to the rock bottom, and then we lift them up, we help them, we surround them with the services and the love and support that they need. And then they finally get to where they need to be, where they can get back to being a contributing and supporting member of society. You talk about the crime. Yeah, I mean, if people are committing assaults, using guns, that kind of stuff, selling drugs, that's hard. I mean, they probably do need to be incarcerated. I mean, you can't just overlook that kind of stuff. But if somebody is just possessing for their own personal use because they have an addiction, it really would be better to get them into a diversionary program that doesn't just stick them in jail and to dry out, because when they come out, they're still going to be battling that addiction. It's just delayed. But instead, get them into the adult drug court, get them into the day of reporting center, where they can start to get that process of recovery on the outside, not in the four walls of the prison or the jail, because that's not a conducive place to recover.
So how would you answer critics that will say that the harm reduction opportunities that have to be financed by the state and by the local government, and Sean, this may be a question for you, how would you answer the critics that said that harm reduction actually encourages drug use as opposed to providing the tough love needed for some of these folks to hit their rock bottom?
The harm reduction, that's part of the reason why we need the money from the opioid settlements and from the marijuana taxes, because we don't want to keep dipping into the John Q. Public's wallet. I mean, we know that that's a hard thing for them to say. Why do we got to keep paying for this? Why don't we just stick them in jail and just keep them there? Why don't we ship them out? Ship them out of Hagerstown. We have an ordinance that was just put into place and started at the beginning of August that said you can't sleep in public places anymore. So anybody who's found outside in a public parking lot, on a street, on a park bench, at the library, you name it, They are subject to being arrested and or fined. It's a Band-Aid, a very tiny Band-Aid over a big problem. And we're starting to treat people more like criminals when they're really not.
But Sean, how would you answer that question
Yeah,
as far as
I'm proud to have passed the anti-camping ordinance. If anything, not one person has been arrested since this happened. And, again, there's plenty of resources and things for people to go to. But, as a taxpayer that pays tax in the city, I don't want to sit on urine-filled benches. I don't want to see homeless people at the park. And, HPD doesn't arrest anybody for being homeless. We ask them to, leave public property. If they refuse, they're arrested. So it's common sense. And that's what I support. And, again, harm reduction, I'm not against that to a degree, but I don't support having drug paraphernalia vending machines throughout town because you're encouraging that type of behavior. In San Francisco and Portland, we're seeing them start to get more tougher on this, where they're saying, hey, we've got resources to help y'all, but you can't continue doing this and you will have to go to jail. So again, I'm sympathetic, but I'm also sympathetic towards the taxpayers that for many years and have not been listened to, and they don't feel safe to come downtown. So you can't leave that on the taxpayer dime with everybody else.
And Sean, you make a good point, and Brian, you make good points. In other words, it seems like there is very legitimate issues on both sides of trying to deal with this issue. I mean, so Sean, in regards to what you were talking about, as a public official, public safety is probably your number one issue that you have to take care of. And when you have issues like what happened in downtown Hagerstown about a year and a half ago, where two homeless individuals were performing sexual acts in front of a high school, right? That's something that has to be dealt with. Even though, and I believe you're correct, Brian, I'm not disagreeing. I can't disagree with you at all. But where an addict who's in possession is not necessarily a criminal. But what we do see is that the more individuals that are active, more addicts that are active in a community, the greater the crime. And so, there seems to be a symbiotic process that's going on here. And when you look at the communities and they're relatively few, and that's one of the concerning issues, is that the number of communities that have pulled themselves out of these types of issues is not an encouraging number. But it seems like what they did is they broke a cycle. They picked some way, shape, or form in a chain of events, and they cracked down on that particular part of it, and it broke the cycle and allowed things to get better. And so the question ends up becoming, from the way that I'm looking at it, is what is the best way to kind of balance out all of these issues that both you bring up, Brian, that you bring up, Sean. And just a couple of statistics here is that nationwide, about 17.3% of Americans are addicts. At any given point in time, 46% of addicts say that they are attempting recovery. And yet, over the course of a lifetime, only 11.1% of addicts actually beat the addiction and spend the rest of their lives addiction free. So the numbers are kind of discouraging. But for those who achieve kind of a certain level, and I believe that's what you were starting to get at, Brian, a certain level of conviction or hitting a bottom, as the term Mark used a few moments ago, there's that group of individuals where the success rate is in the 50, 60, and sometimes higher percent for beating the addiction lifelong. And obviously that's what we're trying to get to, is everything to be in that range as opposed to that 11.1% range. What is that? What is that missing or special sauce that makes the determination of what truly helps a person stuck in addiction versus someone who is going to go through the regular unfortunate process of 99 or 89% staying in addiction the rest of their lives?
Yeah, they have to want to get clean. We've had many guys who they relapse because they're not ready to get clean. It's just the way the addiction works. The craving is overcoming, and they want that pleasure, the pleasure that they get from the high. I call it, well, I'm not the one that came up with it, but there's a pain pleasure paradox, basically. Mm-hmm. Until the pain of using overcomes the pleasure of getting high, they won't change. And rock bottom is a good word for it, a good way of looking at it. Once they hit their absolute limit, they can't take it anymore. They're tired of waking up sick every day. They're tired of having to do awful things to try to get the money they need to buy the drugs. They see their whole entire life just slipping away from them. Family won't talk with them. Friends are walking away from them. They get to they're at their last straw. Then many of them say, I need help. We are one of the big prison areas in the state. Cumberland, Eastern Shore, Jessup. Yep, Jessup, Hagerstown. We got 3 prisons, plus a county detention center. And many of the inmates at the prisons are not from here. We have over 100 a month coming out of the detention center. 100 a month are not from Hagerstown. They're not from Washington County. They're from Baltimore. They're from the Eastern Shore. They might even be from Philly or New York and just happen to get arrested here in Maryland, and then they're sent here to Hagerstown. They're not even from the state, and yet they park it right here in Hagerstown because they got nowhere else to go. No one's helping them. They don't have the money to go back to Philly or go back to Pittsburgh or down to Richmond or something like that. We need a policy that says, no, you got to go back home. And we there are programs. One's called Journey Bound, another one's called Homeward Bound, that is supposed to, in concept, accommodate this, get them back to where they are or where they're from. Organizations like Gatekeeper, like my organization, True North, we're willing to work with the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. We're willing to work with the Sheriff's Department if they will work with us and say, hey, you got somebody coming out? Give us a call. Implement some of these procedural changes at the local level. We might have a chance. There's something that people don't want to talk about. I'm going to. The LEAD program. It started off as a law enforcement assisted diversion or something like that. I think it was the words they used. Yeah. And then it went to let everyone achieve with dignity, I guess, to try to make it sound not so heavy on the law enforcement side. But the goal was to go out as a team, have a peer, somebody who's a trained peer specialist, a law enforcement personnel, hopefully in plain clothes, but there to keep the peace if something were to happen, and a case manager, a case assessment person who could evaluate the person's needs, go out into the areas where the homeless are and say, hey, we'd like to help you get into shelter, get the services that you need. Come with us. We can work with you on this.
See, this is the problem with kinder and gentler sometimes, Brian, because the LEAD program was the law enforcement assisted diversion program. Mm-hmm. People who were on the street doing drugs, they would get an option. It was usually a social worker and a police officer that would show up simultaneously, working together and say, look, you either get help right now or you go the law enforcement route, but there's got to be a decision made right here, right now.
Right, and that's the way it should be.
That's how it was. Unfortunately, our kinder and gentler government has made it more of a hug a thug program, and unfortunately, you don't get the same results. People in that situation, and I can relate 100%. I've been in recovery for 35 years. When you hit rock bottom, you need help, but you also have to hit that rock bottom. And when people continue to save you from yourself, you continue to plummet. And although people think they're doing a favor for people by helping them out, what they're doing is they're allowing them to avoid their bottom. A bottom that could have led to recovery is now worthless because we have, in our kindness or whatever we want to call it, we mitigated the consequences.
We need to back our law enforcement officers, not pull these kinds of things away, so that they can be confident in doing their work and not having to worry about legal consequences down the road.
And we've seen where societies go with when there's no consequences for criminal behavior and drug behaviors. I mean, Portland and Vancouver and San Francisco, these are cities that are dystopian now with the walking wounded. Talk about the zombies in Hagerstown.
Well,
if you ever go to Portland and see the fecal matter everywhere and people shooting up in the streets, and the citizens of those towns have just accepted it, like this is how life is now in this weird new world. of no consequences and people acting out without any bottom, like we talked about. When people don't have to hit a bottom, they keep on digging a new hole.
The prison closing, was it Jessup? The governor recently just closed that. I spoke with Sheriff Bryant. He told me a lot of them are moving to Washington County.
Mhm.
And of course, Governor Moore did this to say he saved money, but we all knew that was going to happen. But
yeah, well, the prison in question is called MCIJ. It's down in Jessup, and when it's closed, it's the largest prison down there in the Jessup region. Mm-hmm. All of those correctional officers are going to be sent to other prisons to try to alleviate overtime, which is a huge problem with the DOC. But the biggest problem is all those inmates have to go someplace else. And as you gentlemen probably already know, MCTC here in Hagerstown is the largest institution in the state.
Yeah,
so they're going to take a large portion of those inmates.
And there's been overcrowding issues there in the past, and they are woefully understaffed. They do not have enough COs. They've been engaged in many years with trying hiring bonuses and referral bonuses and everything. They just can't keep personnel. Throwing all these prisoners here, even if you transfer these COs, I'm not sure how many are going to want to make the trip.
Also illustrates how difficult of an issue that it is, because everyone here is completely sincere. Everyone here wants everyone to live a great life and offer them what they need in order to do so. And yet, there are conflicting views that aren't just, it's not even about right or wrong. It's how to bring it all together. And I think that that this was a very good start to starting to understand that issue. So I want to thank you for joining us this evening. But
yeah, I just did a homeless shelter city tour with the mayor and the council about a week, 2 weeks ago. That was a very eye-opening experience to see what's available and what resources are out there. And there's a ton of resources there. I think we have a little bit of too many resources because we had a lady about a year or two ago. She came up to city council before I was elected, and she was homeless in California, and she said she moved to Hagerstown because of the good services. And I would like to attract higher income folks from Loudoun County, Montgomery, Frederick, and such as those. But, we did the homeless shelter tour, and, like I said, I understand it's an addiction, but it's also a quality of life issue. I don't think your addiction should impair me from wanting to visit downtown and not feeling safe. And I said, I'm not for let's just lock them up. But I do think there's a lot of resources out there. But I think, to be compassionate, you've been locked up 3 or 4 times and you're still not getting your stuff together, then it's time for you to stay in there. We want to get folks help. It's not like I want to see that, and I think we all do. But we also have public safety, and as a taxpayer, we don't want to become San Francisco and Portland with tents and needles everywhere and people doing drugs. And a lot of it's also of the laws that get passed in Annapolis. And I hate to tell folks, elections have consequences. And a lot of times you're electing people that are passing these laws that let them do whatever they want. And it's going to impact your community. But until folks put 2 and 2 together, they're going to continue to get the same results. And, and we also know that President Trump signed an executive order, basically helping towns that do decide to tackle this. I'm hoping that the city of Hagerstown, we should be getting some federal funding from that as well, from what I know, because we did pass the anti-camping ordinance. And we spoke to the White House earlier this year about that, and they know that we did that, and they were very pleased.
I do want to applaud our council member Flaherty and the other members and the mayor of Hagerstown. You are doing a great job. And the ordinance that was passed, while I may have some issues with it, I understand where it's coming from. And I do sympathize with many of the residents and taxpayers and business owners who are affected by this. Bill and I have advocated for a while now of trying to find a way to have what we would call a day center. We provide them with recreation activities inside the center. We have professionals there who can do mental health and physical health assessments, sort of the things we do otherwise in and around the area, but try to have a place where they can go to during the day, not be on the streets, not be wandering around getting into trouble, into programs that'll treat their addictions. It increases the success that we have in tackling this. It's slow, it's plodding, and we know it's frustrating, but we're going to continue to keep working with the mayor, the council, all the other organizations, law enforcement as well. We understand they have a very difficult job to do, and their resources are limited, and they put themselves on the line every day. So I do applaud all the efforts of all of our professionals, all of our government employees, everybody that's in the recovery community. Mark, you and Ethan, thank you for hosting this and allowing us to have a voice for the people that are out there, both the law-abiding, tax-paying citizens as well as those who are in addiction and recovery.
Well, thank you for being our guest tonight, gentlemen. We definitely believe that there is a two-pronged approach to recovery, and we applaud both of you gentlemen's efforts in that area. I'm going to post the links to where people can volunteer. I know our listening public, if they want to volunteer, only through our volunteerism and helping the situation can we really find solutions, both for consequences and for programs that people need to get themselves out of addictions.
Yes.
Gentlemen, thank you again for being with us. I am your host, Mark Flynn. With me is my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
and we are happy that you came to spend some time with us here on Mid-Maryland Vote. A powerful conversation today with Sean Flaherty and Brian Kurtkyka. Real talk about recovery, redemption, and community reform. Yes, Hagerstown's got the resources and the people to make changes happen. Hey, like, follow, and share for more content like this, only right here on Mid-Maryland Votes.